When the primer ignites and thousands of pounds of pressure push a bullet down a barrel, the only thing keeping the shooter safe is the mechanical lock of the bolt action. For nearly a century, military historians and shooters have argued fiercely over which World War II battle rifle handled that pressure best. The debate always comes down to three legendary contenders: the German Karabiner 98k, the British Lee Enfield, and the Russian Mauser Nagant. But if you look at this Venn diagram of the big three, you won't find a single flawless weapon sitting in the center. Every rifle is a machine built around specific engineering priorities and inherent compromises. To figure out which of these truly worked best, we have to ignore the battlefield folklore and look directly inside the receiver. A battle rifle's value comes down to the raw physical trade-offs its engineers chose to make, how they balanced mechanical strength against speed of operation and the harsh realities of mass production. Start with the German Mauser K98. In the bolt-action world, the Mauser 98 action is the baseline standard for mechanical strength and precision. This cutaway diagram shows exactly why. Behind the bolt head, the Mauser uses two massive front-locking lugs locking directly into the receiver ring. When a cartridge detonates, those front lugs contain the immense pressure. There's no rearward flex. The lockup is completely rigid. But achieving that massive, high-pressure lockup requires a tight physical tolerance. The soldier has to overcome that friction, resulting in a longer, heavier bolt throw. The designers accepted that heavier throw because it enabled their next major innovation, the controlled round feet. Notice how this massive claw extractor snaps onto the cartridge rim the millisecond it clears the internal magazine. The bolt never lets go of the brass. If a panicked soldier violently short-strokes the action back and forth, the rifle won't double feed or drop the casing. Mauser engineers intentionally sacrificed ease of manufacturing to build a system that refused to fail the shooter under acute stress. The British took a completely different approach with the Lee Enfield. They built their rifle around rate of fire. This side-by-side schematic illustrates the mechanical difference. Instead of front lugs, the Enfield locks at the back of the receiver. Putting the lugs in the rear drastically shortens the distance. The bolt travels, meaning a trained infantryman could cycle this action with incredible speed. The penalty for that speed is flex. Because the bolt locks at the rear, the entire length of the steel body compresses slightly under high pressure. As the barrel heats up under rapid fire, those shifting harmonics cause the shock group to expand. To feed that fast action, the Enfield utilizes a 10-round external box magazine, giving the British soldier double the immediate capacity of a German infantryman. But a high capacity doesn't mean easy reloading. The magazine wasn't meant to be swapped out in combat. A soldier still had to top it off manually, using two separate 5-round stripper clips. Then there is the legendary Russian Mauser Nagant. The Soviets needed a weapon engineered for a completely different environment, where raw survival trumped both cycling speed and tight groupings. The Mauser was built with intentionally loose tolerances and a simple single-stack magazine. Those loose tolerances meant the bolt could force its way through packed ice and thick mud without seizing up, even with terrible ergonomics. Deciding which of these rifles is best depends entirely on the operator. A sniper needs the Mauser's precision. A trench fighter needs Enfield's speed. A conscript needs the Mauser's ruggedness. We map these combat scenarios on a chart comparing environmental tolerance against mechanical precision. For long-range sniper combat, the K98 sits at the extreme edge of precision. But when fighting shifts to close-quarter suppression, the Enfield dominates along this newly added rate of fire axis. We have to look closely at the Mauser's position here, though. The flawless precision the K98 was famous for did not survive the reality of the war. Producing over 14 million rifles placed a crushing strain on the German industrial base. By 1944, facing absolute material desperation, German factories transitioned to the Kriegsmodell, the war model. To save time, production was slashed to 14 hours per rifle. The rigorous quality control vanished, aesthetic finishes were abandoned, internal parts were left rough machined, and solid walnut stocks were replaced with cheap, heavy laminated wood. Those crude late-war Mausers reflect a collapsing empire. They prove that brilliant engineering means nothing if you lack time and materials to manufacture it properly. That same material desperation fueled intense political infighting. The Waffen-SS was rapidly expanding, but the regular German army controlled standard weapon allocations, forcing the SS to look outside normal supply lines. To bypass the army, the SS set up direct, secret procurement contracts with the Steyr-Daimler Puck factory in 1943. The reality of how these specific rifles were built is incredibly dark. Assembly was carried out using forced labor within the Mayo Gussen concentration camp system. Collectors navigate a complex flowchart of historical markings to separate standard rifles from SS builds. The Steyr contract path ends here. Look for the factory code, BNZ, no standard army inspection stamps, a serial number lacking a letter suffix, and a single SS rune. Looking back at the contenders of the Second World War, the debate over which is best usually ignores the context. They were built in. But if you evaluate a rifle strictly on its mechanical perfection, its ability to lock down high-pressure rounds safely, and a deep, traceable historical provenance, the Mauser 98 system stands alone at the top of the bolt-action world.